In the 80s and early 90s, Dungeons and Dragons was definitely a phenomenon, but it wasn't always well regarded like it is today. Back then, D&D groups were much more underground, even more so than Stranger Things portrayed. I actually started off with Advanced D&D, which from my recollection had a few extra rules compared to the original. I just remember dying a lot, which was a sharp contrast to other tabletop games and RPGs that I played back then, especially GURPS. However, my cousins had a 286 PC, and on it they had some D&D computer games, which I thought were incredible. You could create characters, customize their hair and colors, and tweak their attributes. That classic RPG hook. I swear, character creation is 90% of the fun. So, when I was at the local rental store and I saw an advanced D&D Heroes of the Lance on the shelf for the NES, I snatched it up immediately. I thought this is going to be great. Looking at those tough-looking characters on the back of the box, I was convinced I was in for a legendary weekend. Until I wasn't. Man, this game is hard to describe, but trust me, it wipes the smile right off my face. It was brutal. And I remember a couple screens and constantly switching characters only to die and die and die again. I don't even remember what the enemies were. I just remember not being able to fight them because the controls were so unresponsive. Well, we took it back to the store, and it's been a while. I've caught glimpses of it here and there over the years, but I rarely talk to anyone who's talking about it on YouTube. Well, it's time to load it up and see if it's really as bad as I remember, or if I was just a kid who didn't appreciate the sophistication of the gameplay. It took a minute to actually find the game, but the opening song is surprisingly quite reasonable. However, the moment I started, I immediately found it was difficult to move around. I pulled up the menu and tried to switch characters several times without any luck. On paper, the menu shows some real sophistication. Each character has unique abilities, items to collect, and a way to save the game. It's a good sign, at least in theory. But once I actually started moving, I couldn't for the life of me figure out how to enter any of the doors. I just felt frustratingly familiar, let's just say. Apparently you have to hold the direction button for several seconds just to get the input to register. After stumbling into a few traps, I ran into my first enemy. The combat is real time, which is fine, but it's a total slugfest. My weapon barely seems to connect. Then it happened, like a pair of dwarfs came out of nowhere, and they just started kicking my party to death. And the worst part is how the game just rolls to the next character automatically. It switches to my wizard, then one kick later, he's dead. Eventually I managed to break free, and I realized I could only land a hit if I diagonally attacked. I wandered around for a bit after that, but I didn't last much longer. To get any real traction in Heroes of Lance, I'm gonna need a whole new strategy. Well, let's just say guides, maps. I have no idea what I'm supposed to be doing or going, and other than just dying. I'm gonna need to have better party management. Character order seems to matter, and I need to lead with a heavy hitter, and keep that wizard way in the back. Can't even switch him once the fighting starts, so gotta be careful. Which in this game means saving frequently. Well, my research revealed several interesting details. As it turns out, this game was ported to many different systems, and I suspect that it probably felt much more at home on a PC rather than the NES. Thankfully, there are maps. A huge shout out to the map master, Starfighter 76. You'll find him everywhere. That fighter's definitely been fighting a good fight against those kind of vague 80s game designs. I also found the guide was pretty enlightening. The characters are all based on the Dragonlance series of books. I actually tried reading them back when I was young. I checked them out of the library, read a few pages, then realized I had no idea what's going on. I didn't get very far back then, And through the years, I only met one other person that absolutely loved the series. Each character has a deep backstory, and actually that explains a lot of the weird mechanics. Because, for example, like when Gold Moon is injured, Riverwind will automatically switch places to protect her, and they're like a tight-knit pair, I guess. Then there's Rosalind the Wizard. The lore said was very weak at birth, and no one expected him to live. No wonder, like, one kick from a dwarf kills him. A slight breeze, and that guy would be toast. I also learned some vital gameplay mechanics, like the magic rule. The first 4 characters in the party can cast spells. This means your caster needs to be kind of near the front, not just the very first slot, but on the front row. A game can be soft-locked if Gold Moon dies and you can't retrieve her blue crystal staffs. You literally can't beat the game. So, talk about high stakes. With these tips and Starfighter's maps in hand, it's time for another attempt. I think I'm going to need a bit of warm-up to get a handle on those controls, but then I'm in for a serious run. Well, after a bit of warm-up and settling with my characters, I was ready to roll. I finally figured out how to switch characters on the roster. You just need to select 2 characters to swap and then they'll trade places. So using the maps, I plotted a course to the stage exit. Though I eventually kind of pivoted slightly, a slightly different approach than suggested by the guide. I learned quickly to just avoid the falling traps. You just have to be at a full run. A few other discoveries I found was like the respawns. After you kill the initial enemies, others will just show up at random, so you never want to hang around one spot too long. And the doors and the exits are rarely intuitive. You have to just watch your direction arrow indicator to see if you can actually move. Then it's incredibly easy to just loop around in the game, so you kind of watch where you are at all times so you don't get lost. And then you have 3 attack directions, and some enemies can only be hit with one direction. Unfortunately, pulling off the up and down direction is just like a mix of luck and technique. It's very frustrating. Then with the party management, don't be stingy with the heals. Everybody on the front row takes damage, regardless whether they're front. While the lead character gets the most damage, you have to keep a constant eye on the rest of the party. Okay, you don't have to fight everything. Sometimes it's better to just take a bit of damage and run past. I discovered the game consists of 3 levels that grow more complex as you progress. The first stage ends with a boulder door, and once you enter, you kind of slide down to the next level. The second level introduces like a healing waterfall, which is nice because it has some great music and a close change of pace there. It's surprising how many classic games have a healing springs like Zelda, Shadowgate, and Ultima. The second stage, though, features baby dragons that are total pain. You really need to have Deflect Dragon Breath spell on. And then there's pits. Jumping's very janky. And if you're not using save states, the platform will just easily chew through all your characters. And by the third level, I was focused solely on finding the direct paths to the boss because the traps and pitfalls are crazy. So, especially when there's no room to get any running start for the jumps. It took me a while to get it. Probably should have used the float spell. In hindsight, yes, that'd been nice. Honestly, I didn't use a fraction of the available magic. It wasn't until the final level that I realized I still had a casting mage and I was casting the spells incorrectly. It's very awkward. Like, you have to jump in the menu, select the spell, push B, then get back out of the menu, all while hoping you're facing the right direction. And if you're too far, your magic missile will just kind of float off into the ceiling or onto the floor. Finally, after fighting through the annoying enemies, dodging the traps, I reached the final boss, a massive dragon. The guide mentions, since the game doesn't say anything about this, that you need to change the Gold Moon, then you throw the crystal staff at it. The dragon clipped me with its flames, but as soon as I threw the staff, the dragon was toast. It's a surprisingly easy battle once you know the trick. I managed to pick up the disc of Niscus, and then teleport out of the ruins. The credits rolled. The ending mentions a sequel, Dragons of the Flames. It looks like this adventure's not quite over, but that's a story for another time. I'll have to admit, I'm quite shocked that I actually beat this game. It's haunted me for a long time, and I was always convinced myself that it was just too broken to be completed. And it seemed that way from people that I watched, too. However, I've come away with a completely new perspective. I believe this game was born from a place of genuine fandom. The developers had likely just finished the Dragonlance novels, Dragons of the Autumn Twilight, and thought, wouldn't it be awesome if we could live out the adventures of Goldmoon and Riverwind and the rest of the gang? They set out to recreate that Pacific journey, which made it fundamentally different from any other RPGs of the area. The characters are already established, they got experience, they're fully equipped, the magic users start off with a full list of spells. You're not playing a traditional RPG from the beginning, you're playing a high-stakes quest. There's no goal to acquire, no character levels to grind for. When you look at the game through that lens, the design starts to make a lot more sense. It isn't about resource collection, it's about clever resource management and character utility. While you realistically only use 4 out of the 8 characters, and only a handful of spells, if it was your goal to live out the novel, then simply basking in the lore and the roster probably feels like enough. For me, I was an outsider, which I expect most players are, it just kind of felt like a broken game. However, for a select few, like Alex, the author of the game guide, it was something more. Quote, "This story is heroic and awesome, and don't you forget it. And it's based on the first section of the first Dragonlance novel, Dragons of the Autumn Twilight. The heroes of the story made a journey to the ruined city of Zax Teroth. I won't explain more. Read the book. They're great." Well, thanks for watching. Hopefully, I'll see you again on another episode of Rental Revenge.